A psycho fan, too. I'm Stephanie. I used to be an avid fan of Stephen Curry, the basketball player who shares the same name as me. Despite receiving ridicule from others who assumed my fandom was solely based on our similar names, my admiration for Curry went far beyond that initial coincidence. Our connection transcended our shared name at a point, and I felt a strong bond with him, almost like we were soulmates. Unfortunately, as time passed, I realized my assumption was incorrect, and our connection was not as profound as I imagined. 7 years ago, I vividly remember watching a game between the Warriors and the Thunder in the company of my 3 friends. However, it was not a pleasant experience for me, as they refused to believe my story about my previous game, where I had the opportunity to meet and interact with my idol. I explained to them how I got to hug him, and he even signed my t-shirt. But they were dismissive and ridiculed me by saying it was nothing more than a regular fan experience. I tried to reason with them for hours, insisting that my encounter was unique and special, but they looked at me as if I were insane. It was extremely frustrating and irritating, and even today, I feel agitated whenever I recall that incident. The Warriors played well as I cheered for him and continued shouting Stefan's name the loudest. I tried to make him look at me and recognize me from our last meeting, but he was too focused on the game to look in my direction. There was nothing to be offended if he didn't wave to some overly slutty girl screaming his name in the first row when he was distracted for a mere minute during the game. The nearby people looked at me confused when I held the middle finger for her. When halftime was about to be announced, I tried to hold my urge to pee to shake hands with him, but I couldn't and ran to the restroom. Thanks to my bad experiences with public restrooms, I brought a disposable toilet seat cover. Even then, the state of the stadium's public restroom was disgusting. The horrible smell made me wonder what those fans did there. So disgusting. I still hate them and try to avoid using them as much as possible. As I was walking back to the stadium, I felt someone sneaking up and hitting me on the head. I tried to turn around and look at the face of my attacker, but I blacked out. When I finally regained consciousness, I found myself inside a car trunk with my hand tied. My thoughts were, great, and this was supposed to be the second best day of my life? Although I was in such a suffocating and frightening situation, I surprisingly didn't feel panicked. It must be because of my unwavering trust in Stefan's ability to rescue me from any harm that had kept me calm. However, I couldn't help but wonder why someone would commit such a foolish act and lock me up with a toolbox full of tools. Then again, not even my friends knew the real me. How would a stranger know who I was? After an hour of struggling, I finally broke the cable tie that bound my hands. It left my hands sore and aching, but I knew I had to keep going. I desperately searched for a way to unlock the trunk and escape my captors. Suddenly, I felt the car start to move, indicating that they were driving to some location after watching the basketball game. In a moment of quick thinking, I grabbed a wrench from the nearby toolbox and prepared to defend myself. I knew I had to stay patient and wait for the right moment to move. Based on the car's movement, it appears that the driver made a right turn from the stadium and went straight for approximately 7 minutes before making another right turn. After that, they continued straight for about 10 more minutes before taking a left. Finally, after driving for about 40 minutes, the car stopped. I couldn't hear any traffic or other human activity, which implied they might have taken me to a secluded location. As the footsteps drew closer to the trunk, I quickly stashed the wrench behind me and feigned unconsciousness. My heart was pounding in my chest as I waited for the intruder to reveal themselves. When I finally opened my eyes, I was met with a woman donning a Thunder's t-shirt, her face twisted with hatred instead of the expected Stefan who was supposed to rescue me. A memory flickered in my mind of her giving me a strange look after I had given the middle finger to someone during a game. It then dawned on me that she must have mistakenly thought I did that for her, and I became someone who had angered her by insulting her favorite basketball player, Russell Westbrook. Regardless for the reason of her anger toward me, it was clear that I was not safe in her presence. I jumped at her as swiftly as a rabbit, catching her off guard, and started thrashing her with the wrench. She screamed and begged for mercy, but something over me didn't want to stop. For some reason, the look in her eyes frustrated me, so I aimed for the eyes in my pent-up anger, repeatedly hitting them with full force, blinding her. Her screams continued, but no one could hear her, for it was her choice to kidnap me and bring me to this secluded area. Maybe she never thought of the possibility that the table would turn, and I was sure she would have laughed if it was me begging for mercy in her place. She thought I was weaker than her and was wrong to assume that. Her screams faded to oblivion as I, filled with disappointment and anger, continued rearranging her face by hitting it. And as her broken skull started to look lifeless, I stopped. I checked for her breathing and pulse, and she was dead. I removed the t-shirt of Russell she was wearing and took it for myself, before shoving her into the trunk she locked me in. Stefan disappointed me by not showing up for his special friend in the face of danger, so I would not be his fan anymore. Instead, this t-shirt would be in my collection as the start of my journey as Russell Westbrook's fan. There were a few bloodstains here and there, but it'll do. There will be an upcoming game that I have the courtside ticket for, and I will become friends with him after our first meeting. Or maybe I can be more. Oh, that muscular body of his.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Do you recall the movie Space Jam? I fondly remember seeing it for the first time when I was only 7. Despite being an innocent and naive little girl, I was immediately smitten with the towering 6'6" Michael Jordan. That movie sparked my interest in basketball, and I was determined to join a team. However, my parents misunderstood my request and bought me a real basketball. My crush on Mr. Jordan continued as I entered middle school and joined the girls' basketball team. I was so obsessed with him that I would buy any magazine or newspaper where I saw an article or picture of him. My room was filled with posters. I even had a t-shirt with his face printed. I aimed to be one of the best female basketball players only so I could meet my favorite star and converse with him once I reached that level. But something happened in the final year of middle school that stripped me of my dream. As the much-anticipated match against a rival middle school loomed only a week away, our team was putting in a tremendous amount of effort during our practice sessions. Since winning this match was crucial for me to reach my final goal, I would head to the basketball court after school and spend my afternoons honing my skills and pushing myself to the limit. I would keep practicing until the guards kicked me out, though I eventually became friends with them. That day, I was walking home after sweating off in school court when my eyes landed on my crush's poster that was almost my size displayed in a nearby store. The sight of it ignited an immediate desire to have that for my bedroom wall, and I hastily crossed the road to reach the store, narrowly avoiding getting run over by a speeding car. Fortunately, I managed to cross the street unscathed and entered the store. But to my dismay, a long line of older girls and boys were waiting to buy Michael Jordan's merchandise. I had no choice but to stand at the end and wait for my turn to buy the poster. My eyes were fixed on the sign like a hawk and the others, while praying for them not to buy it after I learned they only had 10 left, when a girl asked the salesman. They sold 8 of them right before my eyes, and there were now only 2 posters remaining, and I was still the 5th in line. My only option was to pray for those ahead of me, not buy them. That was when a model-looking girl walked in straight to the salesman and asked for one of those posters. At first, I didn't think he would do that, but when he handed the poster to her, it pissed me off. "Hey, I wanted to buy that poster. I've been waiting for an hour in this line," I shouted in frustration at the girl who cut in line, ruining my chance of getting it and the time I spent waiting to buy it. "Too bad, Shorty. It's mine now." She messed my hair with one hand and started walking out. "That's unfair. You can't just cut in line while we all wait for hours. Return that poster right now for someone worthy to buy it." I screamed at the top of my lungs, making her halt and grabbing all the attention to myself. "Yeah, she's right. Why would you sell the poster to her when she didn't wait in line?" A guy who was 3 people behind me said. I guess he was also here for the same reason as me. It didn't take long before the crowd started speaking up about the unfairness, and the salesman had to take back the poster from the girl. She gave me a death glare before walking out of the store, and luckily no one ahead of me bought one. I walked out of the store happily whistling with the poster of my favorite basketball player, as I had just encountered a near-death experience while crossing the road carelessly. I decided to wait by the crosswalk for the lights to turn red. I was taken aback when a hand snatched the poster from my hand and I was pushed in front of a car. The sudden force of the vehicle threw me to a distance, and in those moments, I could see the sinister grin on that girl's face who had my poster now. Everything went as a haze after that, but I heard a few distant voices trying to ask something as I lost consciousness. I blacked out, waking up in a hospital while my concerned parents sat beside me with tear-filled eyes. The first thing that came to my mind was my Michael Jordan poster, but as I tried to get up, my life, my dream, and everything I had worked for came crashing down. My legs were wrapped around in bandages, and I could not move them. It turned out that after I was hit by a car, another vehicle ran over my legs, crushing them and destroying my future possibility of playing any other sport, let alone basketball. I started screaming as panic struck me, and another haze overtook my senses, giving me another blackout. Without knowing how many days had passed, I stared at the hospital ceiling while lying on a bed without uttering a word. I would often stare at the nurses who would take me for tests, thinking how lucky they were to be able to walk. Probably 15 days later, I was put into a wheelchair and found my mother pushing it outside the hospital. Guess I was being discharged. I dropped out of school, and my parents planned on homeschooling me for further education. They were concerned about my indifferent behavior and took me to several therapy sessions, hoping I would finally speak, but none mattered. Sometimes I wonder why that girl would deliberately try to kill me over a poster. Or would I have let it go if it wasn't for my legs? But I never got my answers. Maybe it was because I spoke up over unfairness. But whatever the reason, she destroyed my life. I could never watch another basketball game without being reminded of that trauma ever again. And that's how my first crush ended.
My friends and I hung around the same court and have been hanging around the same basketball court for 30 years now. And I remember the only time that we double-guessed ourselves was 10 years ago, when we were in our early 20s, and we were playing our last game before leaving to all our different colleges, and it was a Sunday. We were all churchgoers, so we decided that after the sermon, we will play a game, and we all brought in our jerseys and kits with us. Now, being Catholic, our parents weren't very excited about the fact that we were going to play on a Sunday, but it was just the day for us, and we were all leaving for our colleges on Monday, so playing again would take us years. So one last game before leaving the city and moving on with our college life. 3 of us were going to the same college, so we were going to play more basketball than the rest of them. Now, we divided ourselves into different teams, and we did according to all our colleges, and the north side were a team, and the colleges from the west side were another. So we called the match North versus West, and we started off the game. And throughout the beginning, we had the most possession, and game was going on our terms, and we were strong in lead and in charge. One of my friends in my team was the one who got a full ride to college because of the basketball. He was the most competitive out of all of us, and probably the only one to play the NBA. It was meant for him. He was going to play the NBA for sure. His career was set. He had the college in the city itself, and he was meant to play for 76ers in the future if everything go by the way it was planned. While everyone was moving to another state and city, he was staying in Philly, and it was the best plan for him. The 76ers had already passed him the contract, and it was good, but the only condition was for him to pass the college with a good GPA score and NCAA rankings. The match started, and we were already in the lead. Since we were all avid churchgoers, there was not much trash talking between us, but boy, being on that court, we were completely different. We did not belong to a religion. We did not belong to a creed, just a team and the court. We would give everything to the game. We loved the game more than we loved anything. I already had an internship circled around for the summer. I was going to be working for the Celtics as the analyst. I was pretty psyched about it, and almost all of us had careers and internships circled around basketball, so our bond was better than any bond people have seen. We were tight, but when we played like we were foes. We were the rivals, and that helped us to be better than a lot of us. I was playing the lead, and we were ahead, and another team was catching up with the score, and the game was getting heated, and it was a close game with scores 36 and 37. But the end of our first break, the Sunday was very hot and the sun was right above our heads, but we didn't really care. We were having too much fun. We resumed the game and I scored a three-pointer, taking the lead in the game. And no matter how much they tried, we always had the three-point lead. The game was exciting and energies were higher than ever, and we were flipping over excitement and cheering and sledging as we played. The score was 57-60, and we were taking a break and hydrating when a white boy came in and asked, "Guys, can I join the game?" And I said, "Sorry man, this is a personal game." And he said, "Okay, but please can I play?" I told him that it's a special private game, and when we are done with it, we will include you in one of our time. And then he said, "Well, I can make you all a bitch in the game anyways." My friend did not like the tone that he had shifted to and said, "All right, white boy, you and me, one-on-one." And then he agreed. And my friend then went on to humiliate him for straight 10 minutes, and we watched the show. The boy never even touched the ball. He was tired and was playing aggressively and failing at it. And then in the desperate attempt tried to foul tackle my friend, who in return slapped him across the face. He looked at him stone cold and said, "I will see you," and then ran away from the place. My friend wanted to chase him, and then I said, "Let it be, dog. It's not worth it. You've got the 76ers contract to look forward to. You've got NBA. That white boy got crack. He's a sociopath. Never mind him." We then let the whole thing go away and went on to resume the game. And after playing for an hour more, my friend scored the three-pointer, and the score ended at 90-87, and us winning. It was the greatest and final game that we played in the court, and we all went to our ways in coming days with the hope of better future and getting away from the town. We all went our different better ways to a better future. My friend got the call from the 76ers he was going to play an early game and make a debut with the team. And then a week later, we saw the breaking news while we were in the cafeteria of the college. A 76ers player was shot by a sociopath white dude over a conflict they had weeks ago. And then I saw the news. It was our friend. He was the one who got shot. The white guy shot him in the leg so he couldn't play in the upcoming days. The sociopath shot him in the leg so he couldn't fly and shoot hoops with the 76ers. For the next few months, all of our friends dropped everything we were doing. We knew where we had to be, and we were together with our friend helping him heal and making him get back on his Nikes. And well, just a year later, he debuted with the 76ers and majorly scoring 7 three-pointers in the game. And to this day, we hang out on the same court every last Sunday of the month to play a game and shoot some hoops. No sociopath can ever stop us from flying and shooting hoops. I burned through the first season of Squid Games, realizing how all the games that they had shown us were the ones we grew up playing. But unlike others, I do have a real painful, traumatic experience with one of the game of Fire and Ice. It was back in 2006. We were all new to the middle school shenanigans, and I was peculiarly not very much socially cognitive, so there were many barriers to me completely understanding what someone wanted me to do or behave like. It was a busy Monday afternoon. Our mathematics class was over, and we were all bored as hell. And then we decided to play a nice game of Fire and Ice when we get to go out. We all already picked up our teams, so we don't waste time in the field. And I was coupled with Melina. Melina was the slowest one to do that, and I was not really aware of things back then. I was diagnosed to be on the spectrum of autism, and back then my cognitive behavior was very different from the children I used to play with. We were a bunch of misfits who hung out together and played so much. Good thing that the children I hung out with were sympathetic and really accepted me despite my behavior that was strange to a lot of people. So the bell rung, and we were all outside, and then we count till 10 and started the game. The game started with Jack making every ice, and then I had with me Melina. Melina was a slow runner. Jack was quite fast, but I was much faster than him. The first thing he did was freeze Melina on the spot. I quickly unfreeze her with the fire, and then we started running again. Every time he would freeze, I would unfreeze her. Knowing this, he decided to freeze me, but I was too hard to catch. But then he quietly hid, and then snuck up on me and freeze me right beside Miss Clavince's car. I was stuck with no hope, since I never really thought that Melina would unfreeze me. I stood there waiting for her, when I smelled something. It was like a burning fuel that I could smell. Then I looked over, and there it was. Miss Celamine's car was sparking, and a little fire broke out. I wanted to run and tell someone, but I was freeze, and I wasn't really allowed to move according to the game. Now this might sound stupid, but my understanding of things was limited at that age, and then as I waited, I saw the fire burning up and becoming quite big, and then it was reaching the engine. It probably started with the AC about 5 minutes later. The fire was substantial, and no one dared come near it, while I was standing right beside it. But I couldn't move until Melina unfreezed me. Everyone was shouting for me to get back, but I just wouldn't, and nobody dared to come near since the fire was unpredictable and could blow up any time. So I just stood there. And so did the adults that were supposed to come in and act. They were busy shouting from the distance. Melina saw that and was crying until she understood what is to be done, and she looked at me and came running in a rush. Even though Melina was a slow runner, at that moment, she was as fast as one can be, and she came rushing in as the adults just watched, and she unfreezes me and held my hand, and we started running away from the burning car until it exploded. I was down, and Melina was down. I'd hit my head on the pavement. Melina had a little scratch on her hands. I never let go of her hand. We were rushed to the paramedics immediately, and everything was checked for. I never let go of her hand, and neither did she. If it wasn't for her, I would have been dead. But here I am, alive and well. And as far as her hand goes, I haven't let it go yet. Melina and I got married after our graduation in 2014. And as we sat in front of the television, binging on Squid Games, we recalled the day we sealed our fate.